It's disorganized play. It's time to get together. Disorganized play. We're going to make some plans. Disorganized play. Get your folks together. For some Dungeons and Dragons and dungeon mastering today.
That was the weirdest plane song I've ever heard.
The Muppet Show has never been darker or more grim, let's be honest. So, there you go, DJ Regular. That's just for you. Maybe I'll do Plane Chant next Tuesday for Thomas W. D. Young. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm your co-host today. I'm your Dungeon Master, Tom Lommel. I'm your Fozzie Bear. I'm Kermit the Frog to Dom Zook's Fozzie Bear. Hey! Welcome to Disorganized Play. Hey, every Wednesday we run a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Tuesday we talk about what we think that game's going to be like. Thursday we get together and talk about how it actually went. So we have we really have kind of like lift the veil on the DM's perspective here. It's not so much the nuts and bolts of creating things, but it's more like issues that you need to confront and consider when you are planning, when you're thinking about sitting down and prepping your session, or you're sitting down and thinking about how did that session go? So, without further ado, we have a few things on the agenda. You can see them to my left, your right. We're going to recap the highlights from last night's game. We're going to ping plot radar, potentially. We're going to revisit the parent peril that we talked about on Tuesday. And then finally, we'll talk about what the real treasure is. The real treasure. I'm going to leave that one kind of mysterious and open. It's not dirty. It's not a tattoo of spiders.
Oh.
Oh. So, there you go. That's the plan. In the course of this, we will also be talking about these maps that we used last night. Maybe we'll even kick off with that. I don't know, since I teased it a bunch on Twitter. Should I make everyone wait? Or should we talk about how they got made at the top of the show? Mr. Zook, you're our executive producer, and theoretically, you're in charge. In title, if not in fact. How would you like to start?
Let's recap, and then
let's recap. So, everyone. I assume everyone watched the stream last night. I thought it was a fun game. Some highlights, things that stuck out to me. I thought it was interesting that Ava and Avril saw one of the halflings being removed from their jail cell, as it is. And then didn't do anything about it, like just sort of like watched as that guy got frog marched away. Mm-hmm. I thought that was an interesting, that was an unexpected moment for me. I thought they would probably start a combat and then we'd have to figure out some way to get Grayson and Thawne involved, maybe like, okay, you're going to come in, some certain number of rounds later or something like that. Mm-hmm. How long can they hold out? I thought it would be more of like start the skirmish right away. They didn't do that. So that was an interesting moment. That was a surprise for me as the DM. In hindsight, as we sat at the table, I'm like, well, I really have put them in a kind of a bind here where half the table really is going to have to work hard in order to get into this encounter that we've laid forward.
Right.
I did think it was worthwhile to do a quick recap and then let's start the action, right? They did have to clarify a few things, which was fine, but I thought that was a little more concise and got the tempo going quicker than maybe we normally would have. So I was a little bit surprised at how pathetic the Veggie Pygmies were, the basic Veggie Pygmies. The thing about Thomas W. Young points out that it was their fault that they split the party. I had a moment to make I had an opportunity to make them pay for splitting the party, and I decided not to do that. They chose not to make themselves pay for it, right? Like they were set in a situation where, well, Avril and Ava can go it alone and hope that the rescue wagon shows up on time or in time, or they could kind of play it safe and wait for everybody to get there, which is sort of what they decided to do. They actually sort of kind of crossed the two of them. I could have had them get jumped, like say a wandering Vegapygmy patrol goes by, and screws them, and starts a combat, and then they are really just sitting there going, oh, we're watching this thing go down the drain while our characters are just running, right?
Yeah.
So I could have forced it one way, I could have forced it the other, and I ultimately sort of put them in the position of letting them choose whether they wanted to be screwed by their choice to split the party. And I think they honestly kind of split the difference by then going and trying to pick the lock and whatnot. We could have also had a thing where they pick the lock and an alarm goes off and the combat starts and they run away or whatever it is. You know, that could have happened too. There's a lot of potential there, but those are all options in terms of like how juiced am I to get into this combat and force this thing toward a toward a conclusion.
Yeah, it was interesting seeing how they were dealing with a lot of the encounters that they were running into. Definitely not a little bit more focused and cautious, I think, than normal.
Yeah, it sort of was a let them choose the form of their destroyer kind of situation, right? Which I kind of like. What I like about that is it lets the players play the game at the level that they want to play it. And last night, you know, to pick up on your point, I think they were playing a little bit kind of careless, you know.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was an interesting blend of cautiousness and carelessness, right? where they were like, okay, let's take a second and try not to alert the guards, and then do all this stuff that, you know, just kind of goes crazy and doesn't work out.
I think what it was when they were isolated, they were like, let's play it cautious, and then they got the party back together, and they're like, well, we got to go get these halflings. Okay. Then there was no real planning, not a particularly great plan coming back into the scenario, right? It was like, okay, well, we head back there, and Grayson's up front, and Thon's in second, and Ava's right on Avril's shoulders. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, are you doing anything? No, we head back there. Okay. You're not scouting. You're not sending somebody ahead. You know, like there was no. After they had ganked 2 guards, like for me, I was like, okay, well, you have set yourself up for a tactical situation, and the Vegapygmies are good at hiding, so they've set up an ambush, and that's why those guys were filtering in from the back and whatnot, right? So, I mean, I did deliberately kind of hamstring the Vegapygmies by putting in a donation tier where their technology only worked kind of a little bit like half the time, right? For those of you who are curious about what that methodology was, I rolled 2d6 every time that they tried to use a technological item, and it was a little bit kind of Apocalypse World style, right? So on a 7+, it either worked normally or it worked more effectively than it normally does, and then on a 6 or lower, it either worked suboptimally, where it drained more charges than it should have, or it started to just short out and not work anymore at all, right? So that's what was going on with that particular mechanic, which I thought was actually like interesting, right? Like what's interesting to me about this adventure is that there is definitely a theme of technology is difficult to use and unreliable, and I thought that really enhanced this encounter enhanced that theme. And for me, this encounter is probably one of the big set piece kind of like showcases of technological weapons and the advantage of using them and the huge disadvantage of using them, right? When they hit, they can do crap loads of damage, but they're all over the place. They often don't, most of the time, half the time they don't work, right?
Yeah.
So that was my purpose with having such a big fight with this. Was I think if anything, I were to go back and adjust that fight a little bit more, it would have more people come in the back and really trap them and do some more damage to Thon and Avril in the rear ranks, rather than just fighting kind of a one front kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
On the other hand, I was starting to look at the clock, and as we're getting to 10:30, I was like, I've got a couple things I got to wrap up in this fight, and then I got to get out of it, right? So it was kind of like I couldn't keep introducing more guys without dramatically prolonging it even more than it already was, right? So, yeah. So it's slightly better than a 50-50, right? But not hugely. So, and I liked the idea. One of the reasons that I use 2d6 is because it does give you a bell curve. I thought about just creating like a d20 table or even percentile dice, but those don't roll towards a norm, right? 2d6 definitely does. So that's why I chose to go with that. And to be fair, like they've probably harvested the best technology that they can find and have mastered it to the best of their ability. So they should have a slightly better than 50% chance of it working. The party, on the other hand, may not have that. I don't know. We will see, right? So yeah, it's good math using your bell curves. It's good math for you and your game. Other highlights from last night's session. I mean, I loved when the chief came out with the little fat boy and fired it at the party. And then when Ava, like, that was unlocked last night, that Ava can absorb all this energy and like overcharge her spell slots. I thought that was really like, that was a peak moment. I wanted to, you know, so just to take you inside the DM's thought on this, if you remember, Ava had a vision in the Palace of Mirrors where they're in basically some sort of large room with all this metal equipment and grates and whatnot, and Grayson says, I don't think I can do this, and Ava says, get out of the way, let me do it. Right, and then she transforms into this giant wave of water or whatever.
Right.
I was trying to find a way to kind of like foreshadow or set up or explain how that moment could come about, and I thought that this whole thing where she's obviously like been a source of God's fire energy, right? Like she's got radiation. So this whole thing where she can absorb radiation now all of a sudden I think really adds a whole new dimension to her character in terms of like her suite of abilities and what she's about. I think hopefully it will open up some things for Megan, although I don't think that Megan as a player she doesn't have agency over like, why do I have this or what is this or anything like that, right? So it's a little bit kind of like, well, I'm shoving this thing on your character and I know why and you don't. And sometimes that's a difficult position to be in as the player, right?
Yeah.
It's not an idea that she came up with, it's an idea I came up with and now I'm intervening on her character concept. So that's something that I should, it would be good for me to negotiate with her a little bit and kind of talk out a game, like, how do you feel about this, where it's going, what do you think about it, is it cool? The unfortunate part is, like, we can't have that discussion after the game because it's 11:30, so we're just gonna go home and go to bed.
Everyone's tired.
But yeah, thank you. Thank you, Uncle Dave. That was a super, like, I knew in the back of my mind, I hope this gets unlocked because I really want this thing to get tripped off, and that was super fun. So yeah, I thought it was also cool when he came out with his chainsword, and then he got swacked down, and it was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fun moment when the last guy had him make a morale check essentially. And he looked around and he's like, I'm gonna fight, but I know my fight is over. I'm gonna stuff the grenade in my mouth and I'm gonna, grapple you and set this thing off. So that was an interesting way of getting out of that thing without the whole quandary of, do we take prisoners? Do we try to chase him down as he runs away? Really, the option for me was, is he gonna fight or is he gonna try and run deeper into the complex and get away? And I didn't want to face that sort of. I wanted to get into the scene with Abigail Birdsong, with Avril's mom. And in fact, I wish I could have wrapped the whole thing up a little bit tighter so that we'd been able to play the scene with her mom in a little bit more depth or fullness, right? But that being said, I thought there were some interesting revelations with her parents too, right? Like her parents don't know that they've abandoned their kids for 13 years or whatever it is. That's pretty fascinating. That has some interesting implications. and also this whole curse thing that got unlocked thanks to chat, where from my personal perspective, the nanites are eating away at people for some reason, right? Who knows what that reason is, but the fact that I realized as I was doing the development and thinking about like, well, what could that curse be and what's going on? Number one, how can I tie it back to those statues? Because that was just sort of left dangling. I don't have it on Plot Radar, but that was a thing that they saw, that they remarked upon, and it didn't. They noticed it, but they didn't learn anything from it. Well, now it ties back to what's going on in the ship, right? And I also realized there's so many plants in this thing. It's all plants, 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 plants. Why is that? And then I realized, well, maybe something is harvesting the flesh of actual like mammalian creatures, right? So that's pretty interesting to me. So I think those are the highlights from last night. I was glad we got to the parents, and I was glad that we got, so here's one thing I will also say about introducing that time jump element of, we've only been gone 10 days, what are you talking about, right? I wanted to come up with a way that Avril's parents could be gone for 13 years and apparently have abandoned their children without making them dicks, right? And that's the really, that's the tricky question, right? Is that these people have been gone for over a decade. They're terrible people if they just decided to take off. Like, the only way that you can justify this, I didn't want them to be evil, like villainous people, is something happened to them that they either got captured or kidnapped or enslaved, or this weird, time dilation thing came out. Wraith 42 says there's a lot of implications. Not only did her parents not abandon her for 13 years, having been there about a week, but how much time is passing for the party during the time they've been stuck in the ship? Ha ha! Yes.
Yeah, that was something I was thinking last night. I was like, oh,
right?
Xanathar's probably set up this huge encampment and castle around this place by now.
Yeah, that was a very touching moment when Avril was talking to her mom, and I had some regrets at the end of the session where I'm like, I wish we had the luxury of being able to take a little bit more time with it and paying a little bit more emotional respect to that moment, because I could feel myself kind of just trying to push through to the information and not fully engage with, this is a mother who's seen her child for the first time in 13 years. Then I did feel bad, like they got a little bit of short shrift, and I would have liked to indulged in it and explored it in a deeper and even more honest fashion than what we did. I thought what we did was fine. Like, I think it was appropriate, but it could have been a larger, fuller moment too. I saw that potential, right? So yeah, I mean, I think there was some interesting tactical combat and whatnot going on, and there were some great things revealed last night. So it was, I would say, all around like a successful session. It felt like it had focus. I wish I would have tightened up the combat a little bit, but other than that, everything felt pretty good.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about our battle board now, or do you want us to keep saving that?
No.
All right.
Look at that.
Okay, look at it. Look at that, everybody. So this is what I made yesterday. I spent a good portion of yesterday putting this together, and so here was my thought process on this whole thing, right? Which is, I wanted them to have like a tactical move through the map type of experience, right? I wanted them to be able to see how dense and claustrophobic and overgrown the ship has become now that it's been derelict for however long it's been derelict, right? So I really wanted them, rather than describing it in theater of the mind, I wanted them to have a little bit more specific, detailed experience of it in a way that I think this is a different type of experience than what you get from just saying, oh, and there's vines hanging and there's a dark corridor off to your left, right? Like this gives you tactical options. You can go, oh, okay, well, I want to go through, we saw this last night. Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to hide in this spot over here. Okay, great. That's a detail that you get from the player seeing it on the map rather than you just making up, like having that question of like, oh, is there like a little hallway across from me that I can hide in? And then you as the DM have to pause and have that moment where you're like, I don't know, should I let them have a little hallway off to the side or not? Would there be the one there? Have I established that one's there? I don't know, you know what, I'm gonna roll. If it's high, yeah, there's gonna be one there. Oh, I rolled a 3. No, there's no hallway there. I mean, let's literally like kind of like the whole thought process I go through when somebody in Theater of Mind asks me a question like that. Now, you could just be a more generous DM and go, sure, there's a hallway.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about having a detailed map like this is that it inspires players to try specific types of tactics, right? Without you having to go through a negotiation of, does this exist in the fiction so that I can try it? They go, oh, well, I go there and I do this.
Yeah.
So my challenge was I wanted to have a detailed and densely organized map of the ship, and I didn't want to have to draw it. And I found somebody on DriveThruRPG who does sci-fi maps, and they do ships, and most of the ships are way too small, right? Because we're talking basically about a base is what we're looking at, right? Yeah. Well, it turns out he's done one orbital space station, which is a series of rings, right? It's a bunch of circular type of settlements and whatnot. So all of the levels of the ship are really only about 25 or 30 feet wide.
Oh, okay.
But what I did was I printed several of the rooms off and then just put them back to back and put them together, right? So like in the PDF, this might be the actual like ring of the ship or whatever, but then I just added rooms whether they connected or not, right? So the basic crafting of this is there's 3 panels. Each one of these is its own page, right? Yeah, and the ship is supposed to be. I wanted them to get the feel for. Part of the problem I noticed was last week or 2 weeks ago when I gave them the map of the ship, you realize that actually the ship is incredibly small. Right in the traditional keep on the Borderlands Expedition of the Barrier Peaks, like the ship itself, if you were to actually go, oh, okay, well, it is 220 feet that way and 220 feet that way. You could throw a football 3 times and get across that ship. It's not that hard. Like and I get it, because if you are going to play and actually draw all that stuff out or whatever, if you're going to play at the table and you're going to have somebody try and map that out, you don't want it to be so convoluted that they can't keep up with it. But it's got to be big enough that it feels like it could keep be a bunch of people. The good news is, like, we just showed one section of the ship, and now it feels huge. You really get a feel for, like, okay, we've described this as a maze. It's a labyrinth of metal halls and corridors and things like that. But now we actually get a feel for, oh, this is literally how dense it is, right? So just to get back on the crafting side of things, there's 3 sections in each of these, right? So this is a page, this is its own page of the PDF, this is its own page of the PDF. So I cut those out into sections. I laid them out on my bed so that I could get them all logically laid out, so that part of the design intent here is that a player can look at this and go, if I want to get into this room for some reason, I understand that I have to go down this hallway, through this door, through this passageway, down this hallway, through these doors, and into this room, because there's a solid wall here, and there's a solid wall here, and that's the only entrances on this side. So the players could actually see how the rooms logically connect or are not connected, right? There's a main hallway that goes this way, but then it really gets kind of like twisty and warny and very narrow, right? So I wanted the players to be able to see the logic of how the rooms connected or didn't connect, and how the layout changed from one end to the other. You could see during the course of last night's game that it kind of turns into a funnel, right? Now, so when I did this, I didn't think about making this map. This is actually 2 pieces of foam core, but this, what you see right here, is about the size of one 20 by 30 piece of foam core, right? There's a little bit like left over. It's not quite 20 by 30, but it's pretty close. But I had like 4 or 5 sections. I had a couple extra sheets, rows of sheets that I wanted to attach, and I'm like, do I just make this as one piece of foam core that I lay down? And I was like, well, I'm gonna have to use 2 pieces of foam core anyhow, right? So then I decided, well, what I'm gonna do is if I have to cut this anyhow, I'm gonna cut this into single strips.
Yeah.
And that way, you know, as we saw last night, the beauty of it is as we march down the corridor, it's like we can just
You can kind of treadmill it.
take, you take one out, you move another one in, and it's like a, you know, like a side-scrolling video game, right? Also, it makes it a lot more transportable, right? And I just have to just stack these sections up, and I've got something, as opposed to those giant foam boards. The other problem with having it on 2 really big foam core boards is if they're at the edge of one side of the map and they cross over to the other big board, now you're screwed, right? Yeah. Whereas with this, there's a pretty good chance that they're not going to straddle 2 sections, and you're not going to be able to keep it all on the table, right? So, and then what I did in terms of decorating, you know, it took me half an hour, although I don't think that's an unreasonable amount of time to spend on this, is I just took crayon and made some green smudges, right? That's what this stuff is, just green. Yeah. And then I was like, add some other earth tones into it. So literally just brown and yellow. And then as we got further into it, I added, you know, I did draw the stuff with a marker first. So if we look, this section is the most convoluted. I didn't actually show this 6th section here. But I drew all the stuff with a marker first. So it really is just scribbles that has some lines to it that kind of indicate tendrils from the plants, right? And then I used one color to color those plants in. I used another color for a little background, and then I just drew in really some very abstract kind of greenery to represent like scum and vines and things like that.
What is this?
This is the violet fungus, right? So
Okay.
the other thing that I looked at was like, what's in the original encounter that I want to make sure that I include, or I feel like I need to include, right? So there's a bunch of shriekers that like are set off, they're guard post type of things. I decided not to include those. I could have, but I decided they were just annoying more than anything else. And after they ganked those 2 guards and then left, and especially the one guard yelled like, help. Basically, he yelled for help, and then they ran away, right? Well, somebody's gonna come and find out what happened, and then they're gonna set an alert. So that's what happened. And I'm like, well, then I don't need the shriekers to set that stuff off, but I do want the violet fungus. So I wanted to have some violet fungus throughout the complex. The other thing that this stuff does is it gives the map just a little bit of pop, right? Everything starts to kind of blend a little bit, like it turns into this morass of green and brown and yellow. And then you put this bright purple stuff on there, and it just adds a little highlight that makes it kind of come to life, right? It provides a little visual interest for you. So that's that.
Black Dragon had the question about, do you know anyone who makes something that can make like a fog of war kind of effect at the tabletop?
Well, so what I have done in the past And I don't necessarily recommend it because it's really a little bit of a hassle. What I have done in the past is I've taken a foam core board like this, but I've kept it as one piece. And what you can do is take a plastic, just take a plastic tabletop or tablecloth that you get at the dollar store, just an opaque, cheap plastic tablecloth for 99 cents. And what you do is I would recommend in this particular case, I would lay it flat on here and then I would pin it on in regular spots. I would pin it down. And then as the players go through the dungeon with this, you could cut away pieces that they could see, right? So you just essentially cover the whole thing with a trash bag and then cut away as they go down this corridor. How far can I see down this way? Cut, 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 cut.
Yeah.
You know, you have to then kind of know what the map is in order to do that. But if you were to do that on the tabletop, that's the way I would do it. I was not particularly concerned about them being able to see all of the rooms. I didn't care about that last night. I wanted them, honestly, to me it was more important that they get the idea, holy crap, what are we getting into? What are all these plants that we see up ahead? What's this purple stuff? What's happening here? I wanted them to be actually afraid of the stuff that they shouldn't see on the map.
Another way that we've done in the past is get just black construction paper or whatever, and you can cut out, or you don't even have to cut out, but you can basically make it towards the rooms so that things are blocked off that you want to block off. So like that, you open up with that square, and that's the only square that's open. And when they open that door, then you can remove that, black construction paper to open
you
up
could
that
also
area.
You could also use black foam core, right? Mm-hmm. So you could get a piece of black foam core and cut it out in those things, and then you would just have to kind of remember that we're there. The thing that I don't really like about that particular method is then the players can look at the map and it almost brings attention to the fog of war thing, and they go, oh, okay, well, why don't we go over here? Because they see that there's a big square piece over here, and they think, oh, that's a big room, I want to go check that out, right? So it actually invites more metagaming than maybe it's worth. But those are all valid options. I think the other classic thing that people do with Dwarven Forge is they just lay towels on top of Dwarven Forge, right? Mm-hmm. Which is fine.
Yeah, we don't have any space Dwarven Forge. When is Stefan going to start making?
I will tell
stuff?
you that if we wanted to set up a 3D printer in this room, Fat Dragon Games has a whole line of, I believe, not just sci-fi corridors, but they have dungeon terrain and all that kind of stuff.
I don't think we're going to get a 3D printer anytime soon.
I'm not saying you have to buy one. I'm just saying if one were to set one up in this facility, if one were to have the space to host a 3D printer.
I see. Oh,
I know a guy who would be willing to sponsor the creation of some 3D terrain.
Okay.
Oh, it would not fall off the truck. It would fall off of my checking account.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, the 3D printing rabbit hole is a deep dive. So,
Epic Forge, where are you?
let me just let me recap for you how easy this was. So I don't know. It was a lot of busy work, but it was not difficult, right? So I cut the pieces of paper out, and I had everything laid out, and then I decided what band everything was going to go into, and then all I did. This is not glued on, because an important tip here is that if you glue it on, it's either going to wrinkle or distort,
or bubble,
or it's going to distort the foam core. The foam core will bend because as the glue dries and seizes, it tends to constrict and it bends. It actually bends the material. So unless you're using like plywood, it's going to bend the foam core and then it won't fit together anymore. And I knew that was going to be a problem. So instead of gluing this stuff, all I did was I took little strips of tape and they go around, just around the edges. I did tack down an edge and then flip it around and anchor it to the back. And I did, 6 to 8 of those for every single piece of paper. So the only other decision I had to make was like, do I lay this piece down first and tape it to the board and then lay these on top of it? And some of that just decides whether, some of that just is a matter of whether this wall looks better on top of this piece of paper or this piece of paper looks better on top of the edge of this wall, right? But it was very straight. It was a very straightforward process. Like I said, it was a little bit labor intensive, but it was not skill intensive, right? The other tip that I will give you is once you have your first piece cut out to size, like, okay, well, this is from this end to this end, and then you're cutting it out on your foam core, all you have to do is lay that, lay the previous piece. What I would do is, let's say that this was all one solid piece of foam core, and then I cut this strip out, right? What I would then do for the next piece is I would flip this over, because I know that these two edges, even if they're not perfectly straight, I know that these two edges match because I just cut them apart, right? Mm-hmm. So what I would do is I would then flip that over so that I know that I want to keep those two edges together, and then I would draw my line using this edge on the foam core, and then I would cut it. And that way, I knew that even if I was a little bit crooked or my line got a little bit janky or whatever, I was going to have three pieces that were going to tightly fit together, right? So that was my whole crafting process here. And I'm very happy with how this turned out. I'm actually running Expedition in one of my home games, and I'm going to use this at some point. But I wanted you all to see it, and I thought it was a great, I love doing set piece combat pieces that have a very tactile kind of engaging thing to them, and I thought this was the big shtick in this one, right? Was like, look at how detailed the map is. Will we ever get this detailed again? Yes, no, I don't know, but I will tell you that the price of materials involved here is trivial. 2 pieces of foam core, 20 pieces of paper, and some crayons and markers, and a short amount of tape. So my main point is, it looks fantastic, but it's definitely something you can do at home. Mm-hmm. It may take you a couple hours depending upon how ambitious you get. I got ambitious and decided to do 6 pieces. I could have done 4, and that probably would have been fine, right? But it's something that you can do yourself. You have the skills and technology to make this happen. This is not some you don't have to be a great artist in order to create something like this. And furthermore, if you have access to a color printer, the blueprints that we linked to have color versions of this. So if you want to print them out in color, I don't know, that's a lot of ink, take it to Kinko's, whatever. But if you want to print it out in color, I could have done that too. I liked the black and white because I knew that I wanted to draw on top of it and I wanted to muddle it up and mess it up. That was my big thing, right? Was I wanted to print it in black and white because I was going to put additional features on top of it and really distort the map in that way. If I was going to stay true to the map, you could have printed it off in color, and then it's just a matter of taping it to the foam core, cutting it out. So you can do it. I believe in you. You can be a cool dungeon master too, just like Dom.
I'm a level 4 dungeon master.
I'm only level 3. One day I will get there. I guess I'm going to have to start my own Twitch channel.
Yeah.
And
you get an automatic level bump when you start your own Twitch channel.
You get a level bump when you do?
Yeah.
Great. All right, so those are highlights from the recap. Good news is we have kind of a leisurely pace today, so don't worry. We're not going to probably end right on the hour. We'll see. Pinging plot radar. I didn't print off the latest plot radar. We're going to have to kind of wing this.
Okay. Wing it.
Wing it.
Yeah, if you guys make something cool for your channels, for your
channels.
Yeah, if you guys have a channel.
If you want to gain a level in DM, you better start a channel.
But if you make something cool for your home games or whatever, please send us pictures, because we love to see that stuff. Please do it. Go to our Discord and drop them into the Discord. DisOrganized Play channel, if you want.
Play channel if you want.
The Play channel if you want.
Like. Hello, Foster's in the ASCII for you.
Did you audition for that? Did you audition for a Foster's commercial?
What? No. I should have, apparently.
Should have. I have a friend who's in many Foster's ads and is certainly not Australian.
Really?
Yeah.
I was in a Bundaberg rum ad.
Oh.
Yeah. That's my only Australian connection. Someday we'll find it, the Australian connection. We have to readjust the camera here.
I want to get this on one of those tracks that you can kind of set up. I've seen guys that build those like, it's almost like you know, boxing matches have those microphones that they can pull down, like the accordions and stuff. Yeah. But it's also on like rails, so you can kind of drag things over. Oh.
Yeah, it could be interesting. Let's see what I have in here.
There we go.
What do I have in here? I always think this is something useful, and it never is. And I don't think I could just draw on this one. You have a do you have a Sharpie, a red Sharpie?
I do, not in here.
Not in here.
Is the wet erase okay?
It's up to you. I don't really care.
You can use one of those, but I do have one.
Whoop, whoop. All right, so this is our plot radar as it stood on Tuesday. This was for both, yes, for both. One day I'll get sheet protectors and I'll be able to just kind of move things around, but today is not that day. I'm going to protect the precious table from bleed through.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
That's a great plan, Tom. I'm 100% for this plan.
All right. So let's take a look at the things that came up last night, right? Where they appear in the plot radar. So somebody had asked, I think on last Thursday, how do you account for things that you just spontaneously make up or inject? How do you account for them in plot radar? And we're going to have a couple of those things today, so let's take a look. So, this is where things are at. I'm going to draw a line here under each of these things and update for today. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, so I think Barshala's Sacred Vessel, Grayson's Vision, those things maybe are moving into the approaching category. I want to think about moving them into this approaching bucket. I'm not going to do that right now, but I can drop them in here. I am going to do it right now.
I don't know if chat wants to smell the...
Oh, it smells like cherries. So I think it's time to like take these things out of the distant category and move them up. Yes, yes. So that needs to happen. What's dangling right now? What are the players aware of that the DM is not going to address anytime soon? I don't know. I'm going to put the time dilation in the distant category, right?
Yes.
I don't even know that that's dangling because I'm not sure how much they keyed in on that.
Yeah, I don't know if they put it together that... I think they're just thinking that's a remote incident that, oh, they were trapped here for 13 years. That certainly couldn't...
It couldn't happen to us. Yeah, I'm not sure if they've... Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure if they've made the connection there. But...
I know if I was a player, I probably wouldn't have 100% connected that last
Well,
night.
and it's a big moment, and she just sort of like... I mean, everybody said, oh, she looks the same as I remember her. Like, they noticed that part of it. But I think they thought maybe she was preserved inside the ship.
Right. Yeah.
Which is not the case. Yeah. Approaching. So I think...
Yeah. Thomas says, I don't think they've even thought about getting out of the ship yet.
I think, well, so keep in mind, you know, along those lines, in terms of them thinking about getting out of the ship, they don't have any reason to believe that they can't leave whenever they want.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I think they feel like, oh, we just go back the way that we came, and we can get out whenever we want. I don't know if that's true. but that's up for grabs, right? So time dilation is something they introduced last night. I'm going to put that on the distant horizon because I don't think we're going to resolve that in the next 2 to 3 sessions. I do think probably, you know, if we're looking at having 5 sessions or so, then things are tenuously living out in this area. Like we can't load up distant a lot. We need to start knocking off some of these things, right? Now, we can check off the Tekka-Pygmies. They got introduced, right? We can check off the blue key card quest. Thank you, chat, for dispensing with that.
Yeah.
The Keys to the Kingdom was a great, like, and here was the thing, right? Number 1, it simplifies the adventure. And they have the sword that basically functions as a key anyhow, right? But number 1, it simplifies the adventure. But number 2, it made such an amazing moment of the chief comes out and he's got this jangling ring of keys on a necklace around his neck, and they were like, "We're gonna get that guy!" Like that made for some great drama to include that element in it. Whereas in the traditional module, that would never have happened, right? You would never have had a thing where they have the opportunity to like grab the mother lode, right? So that was a perfect thing. Now, the engineering deck did not come up this session. We didn't get there. That's fine. Avril's parents we did talk to. That sort of becomes its own new issue, right? So I would almost say that this was finding Avril's parents, and I think that can sort of be closed. But there's a whole new quest. So the immediate one is rescue Tobias. Rescue the dad. Where is he? What's going on with him? And that almost maybe takes precedence over the Secret of the God's Fire, the Earth deck, or the info stream reconnection, or the engineering thing. Now, where this tool comes in handy is you can say, I need to rescue Tobias. Like the party's immediate goal is to rescue Tobias. They have not entered the area with the Intellect of Ours or the Mind Flayer yet. No, they have not. Yeah, I don't think these are going to bleed through onto the page. The beautiful thing about this is I've introduced a whole new key quest, right, or a whole new quest thread. There's a whole new story element, a whole new goal for them to pursue. With Plot Radar, I can go, how can I connect the rescue of Tobias to the Earth deck, or the Secret of the God's Fire, or to Grayson's Vision, or to Basharla's Vessel, or the Ghost? How can I start collapsing various story elements into one coherent storyline, right? That is the beauty of Plot Radar, is I can start making association between things that haven't been introduced yet, or I can start making associations between things that have already been closed or retired, right? Maybe rescuing Tobias has something to do with those doppelganger clone corpses, right? Maybe it has something to do with Torm has left the ship, things that are dormant, right? I can bring that back. Or the owls, I can use those as a way of rescuing Tobias or whatever. So Plot Radar allows me to see across my various elements and start making, and make those connections that I might not otherwise occur to me, and help me streamline and simplify some of my story development here, which, as anyone who's a fan of the show knows, streamlining and simplifying the story development is not my strong suit. I always tend to make things more complicated and make things a little bit trickier to figure out than maybe they should be. But if that's the case, then I need all the help I can get. So whatever tools I can create to toward that goal, all the better. Wraith42 says, I wonder if Avril will feel especially guilty since she stood and watched her dad get dragged away without doing anything. It might spur them on to do that ASAP. I think there's no question that this rescue Tobias is like, that's the hook right now, right? Right. Like the God's Fire, we've waited this long, it doesn't matter. We've got all the keys that we can do. Let's pursue Tobias. And it's a strong, motivated goal, right? So we're going to talk about addressing that a little bit later on in the talk back today. But it's definitely, I think this is #1 priority, and everything else that's on here becomes secondary. So we do have to sort of make a decision of, did Tobias somehow get sent to the engineering deck where the God's Fire is? That could be good. Do we send him to the Earth deck and they go onto an exploration of that as sort of a side quest or an intermediate quest, a step that they didn't expect to take? So for instance, if they hadn't met Avril's parents last night, then my inclination in terms of how I'm shaping the story would be send them right to engineering, let them explore the power of the God's Fire, what that secret is, learn how they can harness alter control, exploit it, whatever it is, and move on with the rest of the story and complete the rest of the mystery of what's going on in the ship. Now that storyline takes second position to rescuing Tobias, right? That means I can send them to the Earth deck and then send them into the engineering. Maybe they need God's Fire in order to ultimately save Tobias or whatever, right? I don't have answers for this right now. I have some ideas about it, but I don't have answers for it. The things that you could clearly ask yourself are, was Tobias somehow sacrificed to the God's Fire somehow? Could Tobias be used for Basharla's vessel somehow? Do the ghost children have Tobias? Was he traded for something? You know, those are all. So here's the thing. This Rescue Tobias quest is not in the adventure. It's a creation of whole cloth of my own devising, right? It's incredibly powerful because it's tied so tightly in with the backstory of the party and the fiction of the characters and the world that the characters have created, or their piece of the world that they've created as part of our whole story, milieu here, right? So it's incredibly potent in terms of what's happening at the table, but in terms of what's given to us in the module, it is non-existent. In order to create a bridge between the adventure and the campaign, we can use Plot Radar to start asking questions of what's in the module that could help inspire us to tie Tobias, this story that we have from outside the module, and integrate those two things together, right? Black Dragon BK says...
8K.
Oh, 8K. Does the radar help you self-assess if you're railroading too much, or is that not a big deal? I don't think it helps you assess that.
I think it's hard to tell if you're railroading or not, right? Because you might know that you're not giving them options, but you might, if you're looking at it from a GM standpoint, you might be going like, well, I'm giving them limited options because they need to go here and they're getting sidetracked and stuff like that. So it's a little hard to tell, I think, outside. I don't think you would necessarily be able to tell because you're kind of giving yourself a lot of different things. If you only had like two things in immediate and you weren't filling anything else out, then yeah, you're you know.
So let me just clarify something though, right? Your story should be an arc, right? It should be an inciting incident that prompts a whole bunch of questions and mystery and a whole bunch of story elements. And you should actually have a lot of stuff on your plot radar at the beginning of your adventure, right? And then as the players proceed through that adventure, they resolve things, they uncover mysteries, they reveal stuff, they learn about, you know, different elements, different NPCs and stuff like that. And these things start to drop off the map. So in fact, we can see that over here, now the Tekka Pygmies are retired. The Key Quest is retired. The original Veggie Pygmies have been retired. The Starship Map and Primer have been retired. The Doppelganger Corpses, you know, they've been in the med lab for whatever that's worth, etc. Is there anything else on here that we could necessarily retire? But the point being is, as you go through your adventure, you begin eliminating story elements. That is not eliminating choice. That is your players actually assuming command of information, right? So all choice in a role-playing game is based on information, and generally, and I would say, you know, most potently, it is information that the DM has that somehow the players uncover or reveal, right? So the purview, the mastery of that information goes from the DM over to the players. They know what it is. They know how to manipulate it. They know how to deal with it. They know how it fits into the grand scheme of things, right? So as you go through your adventure, you begin eliminating this stuff. So actually what happens with Plat Radar is things go out of the distant column and everything starts to funnel down into the immediate column.
Right.
I don't think I've sat down with you and explored this, but we have another thing called I think we call it the plot grinder, right? And what that is what if we only have like 3 or 4 story elements left and we don't have a bunch of sessions to explore that stuff? How do I put all of that stuff into an encounter that I can actually like incorporate it into an encounter, make it really like potent, right? So eventually you begin marching down into, your adventure does become a funnel, right? Maybe at the end of that funnel you do have 2 paths where they could go or whatever, but it's not inherently bad, right? So to actually like get to the heart of the question there, the question is, what is railroading?
Yeah.
Because revealing information about things that the players are going to encounter is not railroading.
Right.
That's called doing your job as the GM. And not having a limitless supply of other things that they could be doing is not bad DMing. It's how you shape an arc to bring it to a satisfying conclusion. Now, if you want to play your game, as somebody points out, there's such a thing as too much sandbox. If you want to play your game as you guys can go in any direction at any time, that can be a fun style of game for a particular type of player. But it does not often build into an exciting dynamic climax, right? So we're building towards some sort of conflict here. Ultimately, I think the conflict is going to be mastery of the God's Fire versus Xanathar. That's our big ultimate conflict. Yeah. That's where the climax of our adventure is going to be. Along the way, they need to overcome obstacles to get to the mastery of the God's Fire, right? Maybe they master the God's Fire really early, but then there's other obstacles that they have to overcome, like the time dilation before they can encounter Xanathar, whatever it is. But the point is, if it's just a sandbox where they could go in any direction, it becomes inherently anticlimactic because the players can just sort of pull the parachute on, oh, we don't want to go face that guy, why don't we go explore the weird pyramids off in the desert?
Right.
If your game is just about leveling up and accruing XP and treasure and things like that, then that's fine, but it's not inherently dramatic. I'm not saying that's bad. If you want to play that sort of like, kind of grinded out sandbox type of game, that's fine. World of Warcraft is based on that premise. There's always another guy to defeat. But you will even see in World of Warcraft where they build to a dramatic big bad conflict and then it's over.
Yeah.
It's very rare that you go, well, you could go fight, the Lich Lord, or you could go to this passageway and there's undead hippopotamuses or something like that, right? Sounds tantalizing now that I say it out loud. So,
the real treasure, undead hippopotami.
Yeah. I think what it comes down to is if the players aren't interested in the goals that you put forward and put in front of them, and you don't give them any choices to either make it more interesting or get personal motivation out of it, and you just sort of force them down that plot funnel, then that is railroading. It's bad DMing, right? I think where we're at an advantage here is we have a personal connection to what's going on. We have a personal connection to the main villain here, who is going to threaten them at the end of the encounter. We have a personal connection to Grayson's vision of who he wants to be and whatnot. So the more that you can be tied to, Ava has a personal connection to being of service to Basharla's, desires or whatever. So we have the party well integrated into the events of the adventure, and we just need to help give them some tools so that they can pursue those. Anyway, so I think we need to make some decisions about what is involved in this rescue of Tobias, and I think that needs to be the focus of our next leg of our next session.
Yeah.
And if I can connect that to other stuff, I think this info stream stays, reconnection thing maybe stays in the background. Maybe. I don't know. We're going to talk about some other stuff here in the stream that will then maybe come back and revisit this or help shape our idea of what we need to do with these various elements, right? So let's move on to our next topic. I think that's a pretty good revision of where Plot Radar is at. And the main thing is just getting this rescue of Tobias on the board and getting the time dilation on the board. And I don't think there's anything else that it deserves to be on the board, right? Yeah, well, I made it in 2017.
I know, but I'm just updating.
You're updating
copyright.
it. Now it's copyrighted. Yeah, that's everything pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I really sent you guys off on this undead hippos thing, right? Oh, flesh-eating nanlites, the curse. Yes, the curse. I think the curse is probably approaching.
I feel like we had that at one point, but it was referring to the metal skeletons.
Yeah. Silver curse. I think that's probably in the approaching category. I don't know that it's in the distant one. You could float it in here either way, right? But yeah, that definitely does have to be on the board. Thank you, Thomas, for making sure we got that on there. Yep, those are the big ones. I think also something that we could have as dangling is Ava's new power, right? She's certainly aware of it, and I'm not sure where it fits in.
She firestormed.
Yeah, she firestormed. I don't know. I think that's cool. Hopefully she thinks it's cool too. But let's get it on the board as something important out there. Yeah. So, Parent Peril Revisited. We talked on Tuesday how I didn't want to put the parents in. I didn't want to kill them off kind of like meaninglessly. I thought we had to give that moment its due of Avril meeting her parents for the first time, and then the result of what happened last night is that one of her parents ends up disappearing, and the mom is like, "We got to go on a rescue mission. We got to get him back."
Right.
And so he is clearly in some sort of jeopardy. His fate is unknown. It could be as simple as just resolving it, but it provides us with such a dramatic opportunity. So I think the real reason I even put this topic on the board is it begs the question of, why did I let that happen if I didn't want to put his character, like kill him off meaninglessly or whatever.
Right.
And I think from my perspective, just to kind of call back to what we talked about earlier in our discussion today, is she chose to let him go. Whether she consciously knew that it was her dad or not, she chose to let him go.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, when you want to talk about the emotional stakes of that, because that was touched on earlier, like maybe Avril's going to feel bad for letting him go. Maybe when Avril's father finds out that she saw him and let him go, maybe that's a moment of reckoning, right? That could be a real hard emotional moment. Interesting, that's just a DM observation, like where are peaks, where are moments for drama and whatnot, and that's definitely one of them. But it was a choice that was made by the player. It was not, we talk about railroading. Railroading would have been, oh, okay, you try and stop him. Well, he's got, 250 hit points, and he can double move and take a dash action as a bonus action. So he just drags the guy, 150 feet down the corridor, and he's gone around a corner before you can even catch up to him. And then he's behind a door that you can't open, and blah, 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 right? There was a little bit of DM railroading as you can't open this door, but number one, that was justified within the fiction that had been established.
Sure, yeah.
They didn't have the key for that door, and they haven't been able to open a door that they haven't either used a sword on or used a key card on. But she had the option to intervene there or not, and it was a complete unknown as to how tough those guys were, and she could have started something, and she chose not to. So putting that guy in peril was a proactive choice on the part of the player rather than the DM inflicting a choice on the party.
Yeah.
The second part of it is it was not a complete win or a complete loss one way or the other, right? Because even though the dad got captured and taken away, they did rescue the mother, right? A total dick move would have been they both get taken away and they're both gone. Or a little bit less dramatic would be they're both there and they're both fine, right? So this provides a nice blend of there's high stakes because somebody I love is in jeopardy, but also I feel like I've accomplished something. The player feels like their character has done something noble by rescuing one of them anyhow, being able to get a partial victory over, and getting information over what happened, right?
Right.
So it's a nice balance, it's a nice blend. Those are issues that I would encourage you to consider when, that looks like a spam link.
Yeah.
There are issues that I would encourage you to consider when you're going to have a potentially big, it's a high leverage moment, right? In terms of you as the DM have a lot of leverage over how the player is expected to respond to this situation because it's very clear what their relationship with their parent is, and when you have total control over the circumstances of that NPC, that's where you cross into dangerous railroading territory, is you abuse that authority and you don't give the player enough of an opportunity to influence events where they feel like, well, at least I had a chance to do something.
Right.
Avril was a meaningful participant in the outcome of her parents' fate last night. And because of whatever she decided was appropriate for the moment, one of her parents got taken away, and she accepted that because she knew she could come back and rescue the other one. That was the compromise she chose to make. It was not an outcome that I inflicted on her by denying her character agency or, by having her face overwhelming odds or anything like that.
Right.
I certainly did drop some hints of well, let's move this thing along when there's more guards coming. It sounds like 6 more guys are coming. Sure. But I don't consider that railroading myself. It's a realistic response to what's happened after you weren't able. If they'd been able to one-shot both of those guards right away,
yeah.
Honestly, if Ava had not been in frog form, they probably would have gotten away with it, right?
Sure.
They would have knocked out both of those guys. But he yelled for help, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I missed the top part of that comment of she's a 10-year-old girl still.
Oh, Thomas said that as far as he's concerned, she's a 10-year-old girl still. He wouldn't blame her. The dad wouldn't blame her for not.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Yeah, it depends upon what's happened to him, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if he's been horribly maimed or injured or something like that, and you could have stopped him before he was handed over to the, torture bot or whatever it is. It could be something that grim. I don't know that I have something that grim in mind. That's a pretty heavy DM move, right? Again, I have a position of responsibility where I know how a character is expected to feel about one of the NPCs, and I have total control of that NPC. So I have responsibility for creating a situation that feels appropriate and able for the players to inject their own spin on what's happening or affect the situation. Wraith42 says, Avril's dad dying without them being able to stop it is a narratively appropriate and an emotional moment. It's one of the tensions that works for both narrative and character development for Avril alike. I mean, it would be a great opportunity for Avril to develop kind of this like, oh, I didn't even get a chance to know my dad kind of thing. I don't know that I want to play that card, right? I think you're right that it would be narratively appropriate and could be a really emotional, a moment of emotional reckoning for Avril. I'm not sure that that's where the vibe of our game is right now. I don't know if that's a card that I want to play with that player. Those are all considerations that you have to make, right? Like, what's the tone of your game?
Right.
What's the general attitude at the table of like when everybody gets together to play? What are they expecting you to get out of it? You know, people who LARP live for those moments, those big like crushing emotional moments of, you know, of honesty and deep sincerity, right? And I don't mean that in a pejorative fashion whatsoever. But I'm just saying, when you come to a LARP table, people are looking for, you know, oftentimes looking for those sorts of stakes. When you come to a D&D table, it's not necessarily at that same level, right? Thomas W.D. Young says, even if it would be reasonable for Avril's dad to die, I think that it would be more interesting to heighten the tension and peril while giving her the possibility of saving him. And that's where I kind of like fall in terms of putting him in jeopardy, but, you know, then giving, you know, maybe putting him more on the needle's edge than the mom was, right? But still putting him on the needle's edge where they could tip him one way or the other. They could save him or he could be sacrificed. And Wraith42 points out the classic sort of Spock-Kirk goodbye moment, whatever that is. Yeah. So I just wanted to revisit this whole topic because I talked about it on Tuesday and said I don't want these things to happen. Right. And I wanted to review, okay, well, here's what did happen. Here's why these choices have been made, right? And I think we've come to some interesting, like, I think that's some interesting perspective in terms of your responsibility as a DM when you have emotional leverage over a PC is to be fair and judicious in exploiting that leverage, wielding that power. All right, so and that also then now when we come back and we go, okay, well that sort of informs now if I want to put him on the needle's edge, what can I do? How can I involve him in my plot radar, right? That's part of it. The other part of it is our final topic for today, which is the real treasure, the real treasure. Okay, so at the end of the session, they found Abigail Birdsong. They freed her. They learned about the curse. They got a hint about the time dilation thing, and they were told, we've got to go save your father. We got to find him, right? That was a satisfying conclusion, but that was not treasure, right? That wasn't a payoff. That was an emotional payoff. That was a story arc payoff, but that's not, in my mind, that's not treasure. That's just a great part of the role-playing experience. Yeah. So what's the treasure here? Number one, they found some more technological items that they may or may not be able to use. Avril's got more grenades. She's happy about that, which is cool. I will say, if you want to short circuit the whole tech tree thing that I built, and Patreon backers, you can download the framework for that for free, right? But if you want to short circuit the whole tech tree that I built, this whole 2d6 kind of like fumble table thing that I built is a great way to just shortcut, does it work this time or not? You know, and you could maybe give them either a +1 or a -1 or a +2 or a -2
as they go.
And kind of bump it one side or the other.
Yeah.
And that's an incredibly streamlined way without having to go into the mini game of we really want to understand this thing. I think both things are interesting tools, and I think they're both appropriate at different times for what you're trying to do, right? But what's the real treasure here? So the payoff that they got of rescuing Abigail and getting this quest to go find Tobias before he meets whatever untimely fate seems to be possibly before him, that's a goal, right? That's a hook. We've given them a hook.
Yeah.
Did it go through a little bit? Not really. I can probably scratch that. I very rarely get this far into the wipe book anyhow.
Okay. Yeah, I don't. Anyway, that's another question.
So, so what's the real treasure here? So we've talked kind of recurrently over the weeks here about plans versus goals. They have a goal, rescue Tobias. They do not have a plan.
Yeah.
Why don't they have a plan? Because they're currently sitting on zero information about where Tobias is, who he might have been given to, where he was taken, what the purpose of his being taken away was, what the deal was. They don't know what's going on with Tobias, right? So, in order to allow them to develop the plan, we have to give them the tools to make intelligent decisions. That means we have to reveal information. We need to arm them with information. So the real treasure here is going to end up being some sort of information dump. That's what I see for next session. Not necessarily the whole session,
right?
But they go further into the Tekapigme's lair and find things that help tell them, okay, well, here's where they took him. Here's who he may have been handed off to. Here's, the rest of the layout of the ship, like here's more context for what's going on, so that they can take those pieces and digest them and go, okay, this and this are related, and so this and this, we could use this to get around that obstacle, and so if we use this card to go down this shaft, we could actually come down a back door into this place, and maybe we can go in and spring and save him or whatever, right? But the real treasure that needs to come out of this big set piece battle that we just had is the reward of information, so that they can form a plan. Because right now they have a goal, but they don't have a plan. And they can't form a plan without information and context. So I think it's dangerous this deep into the adventure to introduce too many red herrings, right? I think there are things that can be vague. And I think red herrings in general are a little bit, you have to be careful with them. I prefer to have things that are vague that then later on become resolved. Torm has left the ship is something that's been dormant on our plot radar. No one knows what that means. I do, but nobody in the party, nobody at the table knows what that means, and they've sort of brushed it off.
Yeah.
It's this vague element that when it comes back into context and then it becomes crystal clear what happened, they're going to be like, oh shit, right? So I think red herrings are difficult because you're tampering with the ability of the players to make informed choices, because then it turns out some of their choices are based off of misinformation, right? But I think it's okay to say there's an obstacle here that isn't well understood. You don't know exactly what it is. Like it's okay. And then if they decide to go that way, I go, well, we're gonna have to deal with it when we get there, right? I think a classic DM technique is to go, all right, you can pass through the cave of the Balrog, or you can go through the Forest of Mists, where it's rumored that fairies play upon your mind, but no one has honestly come out to be able to attest to exactly what they do, right? Okay, well, we can go through, we can go up against the very specific threat that we know is there, or we can go into the unknown and hope that we come out the other side okay, right? That's a classic choice to me. I think it's narratively tricky to say, you've heard a rumor that the, Bell of Wondrous Might is in the Forest of Lost Souls. And then they get there and they're like, oh, okay, we're looking for this bell. And everybody's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it was just a rumor. Oh. Well, thanks for wasting our time.
Right.
Go F yourself. So I think red herrings are something that you can deploy, but it's one of those arrows in your quiver that you have to very carefully deploy at certain moments. And I think it also needs to be something where the players in retrospect can go, okay, I understand why that guy was confused about that, or he would have thought that this would have been here or whatever, or why he deliberately misled us. Oh, it turns out the sage who gave us that advice at the roadside shrine, that's actually the mastermind. Let's go back and kill that Jack. So yeah, I think we've tried this before to some limited success, where we've had briefing sessions and they've gotten maps to the ship and things like that. I think this time, if we can give them specific contextual information about Tobias and what the circumstances are, then we can allow them to form their own plan, right? So a lot of times, D&D is a game of sort of feeling your way through the map and kind of cautious exploration, delving into the unknown. But I think this is one of those situations where you can probably very clearly lay out, here's where Tobias is, here's what's going on, here's who has him, here's what the forces are, da-da-da-da-da, and then lay out some different options as you give that greater context for them to absorb all of this. I've been talking for an hour and a half, so here's my voice is starting to go. But you lay out all of that stuff with some different options on how to attack the situation, and then sit back and let the party discuss it for half an hour. And then they find their own way. They can decide on a path to carve through the module rather than kind of just leading wherever the information takes them.
There's a discussion.
Yeah, discussion of whether we should kill Tobias or not, right? Sure.
What would have the most impact?
I think I don't think we should stage that moment. I think it should be a moment that the players understand what the stakes are and decide how they want to approach it. Again, a classic DM choice that is proposed to the players is you can take the direct full frontal assault that will save you a bunch of time and maybe get you there quick enough to rescue him, or you can take a stealthy roundabout approach that comes in the back door that takes more time and you might not get there in time, but requires less opposition, right? And so that's also a classic kind of tough choice. These are all like tough choices that you might encounter in Dungeon World, right? But if you lay out the situation as that's what it is, then no matter what happens on the back end, the players feel like they've had an active and important stake in the outcome, right? Yeah, it's perfectly acceptable to have him be. It's narratively reasonable to have him killed off. Whether it's acceptable or not is a matter of what the tone is at the table.
Sure.
What my relationship with that player is like, because this is a very personal. You have to realize that the relationship between a father and between a PC and one of their parents is generally an incredibly potent relationship, and so to force too much leverage on that can cross over from something that happens between an NPC and a PC, and something that happens between the DM and the player. And we've seen that. I've seen that at my not necessarily just this table, but I've seen that at tables all the time that I've DM'd, even at like con games where it's like, wait a minute, this doesn't have anything to do with the situation of the fiction. This is you being a dick.
Right.
And whether that's actually true or not, and whether it's justified or not, that's a situation that can crop up at any time, at any table, because of the power of the DM, right? So part of your DM responsibility is feeling your way around those social landmines. It's a social, personal dynamic that's happening rather than we're living in this kind of artificial, objective world of the fiction.
Yep.
Which honestly is, counterintuitive. There is no, it's not anticlimactic. It's not a conundrum. What's the word for the two things that are mutually exclusive? Objective fiction is a oxymoron. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
BSB Care, welcome aboard. So, if you have questions or something like that, I'm willing to field a little bit. But I think that's the real treasure. Is this next session? They need to get enough information so that they feel like they can execute a well-informed plan.
Right. Yeah, they're just
to rescue Tobias. Otherwise, they're going to feel like we're just dangling. We're just going to follow. We're going to go down whatever the nearest elevator shaft is and hope that we can catch up to him. And they feel like they're at the whim of the DM. Whereas if I give them a bunch of information and they can form a plan, even if I have surprises for them along the way, they feel like, well, we made the most informed decision we could have, but at least we got to make the decision.
Well, and it's not just about, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just quickly, that's a fundamental difference between railroading, feeling like the players are getting railroaded, and feeling like they have an active stake and agency in what's happening with their characters.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to say, it's not just about having a plan for rescuing Tobias. It's about having a plan for collecting the God's Fire and how they're going to, deal with the things off the ship, Xanathar and all that stuff. Like, right now, they're really just sort of, up until this point, they've really just been going and just been like, okay, I know we have to get to the God's Fire eventually, but I don't know a way to do that really, and so we're just kind of going.
And so somebody tells them that you need a blue key card, and they go,
okay, all right.
Okay, now we have to find a blue key card.
Yeah, but it's just a linear, like, okay, we'll do that, we'll do that, we'll do that. No one is thinking 3 steps in advance to go, all right, once we have the God's Fire, then what?
Right.
What are we doing from there? So yeah, hopefully, I think this next session, which is going to be Saturday,
coming up quick,
is going to kind of start, hopefully, connecting those gears for them and start thinking, oh, we have to, especially with the ability of having Tobias and Abigail show up and having been here for so long, they have the information and go, oh, how did you get here?
Right.
Oh, well, you do know that time moves differently here, right? And stuff like that. And so that hopefully that there is that that feeling that they can that they get the information that they need, that they can start tracking that.
Hey, thanks for the bits.
Thank you.
I don't know. When I talk about giving them enough information to make a choice, I don't think it's the illusion of choice, because I think both of those options, if we were to set it up as a full frontal assault versus a stealth, longer kind of dive back in rescue, I don't think that's an illusory choice. Those are two very real choices with dramatically different paths. The illusion of choice is no matter what, if you do a full frontal assault or you do the backdoor stealth entry, it turns out the same guards are at the backdoor entry as were at the full frontal assault, and you end up having the same fight either way, right? And I don't think we're talking about that type of situation. The illusion of choice is you ask the players whether they want, they come to an intersection, you ask them if they want to go left or right, and no matter what they choose, it's the same thing, right?
Right.
Falkwood says, any NPC not killed off can always return at a later date to try and kill the party. Yes, that's true. Yo, dog, I do like Iron Man.
Do you, though?
You're lucky I'm not sporting the hat. I almost put the hat on today.
Hat and t-shirt.
Yeah, it's pretty hardcore. Which hat is the question? I'm an asshole. All right.
Just like Tony Stark, your hero.
Just like Tony. I'm just like Tony Stark.
Well, that's real good.
I'm a creature of the night.
No, you got the wrong
I'm here
guy.
to inflict justice for those who could not be justed.
I think you got the wrong guy.
Huh?
Ever since Tony's parents were killed in that alley, an Iron Man never appears too late or too early.
Callback.
Yeah.
Choices do need to have different results. If their choices mean dad dies, dad is saved but horribly tortured, or dad is saved with minimal harm, and the players feel like their choices mattered and led to the resolution that comes, that's a net positive.
Yeah. BSB Care, we are talking about what the potential is for losing Tobias in terms of how much jeopardy Tobias is in, right? I think the dramatic stakes here are like Tobias must be in some sort of jeopardy, because if they can literally just go around the corner and open a door and free him, it's incredibly anticlimactic, right? So I think he does need to be put into jeopardy. And the thing that we've been talking about for about the past 20 minutes or so is how much jeopardy is he in? Is the situation so dire that the party has a slim to no chance of saving him from whatever horrible fate to which he's been assigned? Or is it he's kind of balanced, on a razor-thin margin of the party could come in at the last minute and save him, or he could, die tragically? Or is it, the final piece of the spectrum is it he's just imprisoned and awaiting some other further circumstance or whatever, which is a little bit safer choice, but I think still kind of like paints him as being held against his will and therefore, in jeopardy, right? So that's sort of the spectrum of options that we're discussing, and the implication of, or at least the personal table dynamics of what each of those options implies, right? Because I think, as I said earlier, there's a consideration to be made of, and it's legitimate, is Havana the person going to be mad at me, the DM, if I ruthlessly kill off her character's dad, right? And I think that is a legitimate thing to stop and take a minute to consider. Mm-hmm. And I don't consider that to be coddling the players. I don't consider that to be softballing my game. I consider that being a responsible DM who cares about the enjoyment that my players are having at the table. If I want to do incredibly cruel things to fictional characters that I have made up, I can write a blog post or publish my own fiction someplace, right? But I don't think that I need to do that at the expense of somebody else's fun, because ultimately that's why we're all here. Yes, we want to see a compelling and dramatic story, but don't make the story sacrifice the fun and the enjoyment that your players are having at the table. Right. That should come first, and anything that you do within the realm of that fiction should serve their entertainment and their fun, right? That doesn't mean you don't challenge them. Being challenged is one of the ways that they have fun. Oh yeah, there's a guy who comes out with a freaking nuke, and he's got a chainsword, I'm going after that guy. But don't pull really quote unquote cool or quote unquote dramatic moves that undercut things that your players are going to be, or infringe on things that your players are not going to be cool with. There's a whole other discussion to be had about the social contract between the DM and the players, and whether themes and things that you should discuss up front, and an X card so that people can tap out if they're like, hang on, this is what's happening right now is not cool with me. We can have that whole discussion at a different time, but those are considerations that should be made, right? Yeah. I will chase after the guy with the nuke and the chainsaw after the apocalypse. Will I? Me personally? Well, probably not.
I don't know. It depends if you have your Iron Man hat on or not.
Do I have my Iron Man hat on or not?
Or your secret identity.
yeah,
This is all you need, really.
Thank you, BSB Carey. That was super fun.
Ventellum, welcome to the chat. They just rolled up a character and are wondering if there's any must-read things that they should have for D&D, but outside of the player's handbook.
Oh, outside of the player's handbook. I hate to crack the door open on this, but what kind of character did you make?
Oh, yeah.
What's the race and class? And I assume it's first level.
Yeah.
I'm curious what that is, because that will inform my decision.
Yeah.
I think the other question is, Wraith 42 has had a moment of inspiration.
Put the dad's mind in an owl.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Don't think I haven't thought of, if these owls are actually like personality sleeves, don't think I haven't thought about making that be one of the solutions to this whole curse problem, right? Is like, we load up everybody's personalities into one of these things and then let their meat bodies get eaten and then somehow hopefully clone them into a Vegapygmy or something like that, right? So, Thomas W. DeYoung says, it strikes me that of everyone's parents, Grayson's doppelganger parents are probably the least fun.
Yeah.
That's true.
They're like, we're doppelgangers. Get out of here.
All right, you've got a wood elf ranger who is an outlander.
Horrible charisma and a fur
And
allergy.
a fur allergy. I mean, that sounds like a really fun character concept for somebody who's a wood elf ranger, right?
Yeah.
Keep that dog away from me. Oh, do you want to go horseback riding? Can't do it, man. Sorry. No. Really? What do you do? I ride a magic lizard.
Yeah.
Get your DM on that one. I want a magic lizard. So the other question that I have is, what are you playing a particular adventure? Do you know if the campaign is set in a specific world? Is it a homebrew? Is it the realms? Is it the Sword Coast? Whatever it is. Wraith 42, my dog has fur, and I know you love my dog, so don't give me that garbage. You just love him over the internet, which is the safest way.
That's true.
to love my dog.
I would say, and this, I don't know, I might get flagged for this, but I would say their second edition, when second edition came out, TSR published a bunch of books specifically for all the different classes. So
I am going to give you flack for this because
Yeah.
I think this is terrible advice, but go ahead.
But there are some fun little things in there that you can't use them for. They're not really compatible with. Yeah, there they are.
The Complete Fighter's Handbook.
The Complete Book of Dwarves, which is terrible.
The Complete Bard's Handbook.
Yeah. The thing about these are just 3 of them, but there's a Complete Ranger's Handbook as well. That they have some cool little backstory things about different races and different things that you can kind of pick up on. I would not use them for anything else. They get, for a new player and stuff like that, they get way too complex in terms of mechanics and stuff like that. But there are
and in the AD&D books, those don't even count anymore. They don't even apply, right?
Yeah. But they do have some cool backgroundy kind of things that you can kind of mine a little bit. Yeah, return to reading manuals with me.
Welcome to Horror on the Hill.
Yeah.
You could read those for some background. I think that would be interesting. We haven't really gotten to where your campaign is set, right? What game or adventure you may be playing, because I think that would inform things a little bit. I would say you could. I would probably look at. I would consider looking at, if you're looking for inspiration, which is, I assume, was what you're looking for, right? I would consider looking at the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide, right? That has a lot of flavor of the realms. So specifically, if you're going to play a Sword Coast campaign and you're going to play in any of the major hardbacks that Wizards has put out, that would give you world information and maybe inspire a bunch of ideas about your character, or maybe his interactions with the world, or things that your character is curious about, right? So think about, oh, you're playing Curse of Strahd. All right, well then that you can
don't read Sword
throw that information right out the window. I'm sorry, that it does not apply, because Curse of Strahd is essentially set in Ravenloft, right? Yeah, you could look at Xanathars. That might be a little overwhelming in terms of the number of options that are available in Xanathars. I'm trying to think of... There must be... I'm not personally familiar with it, but there must be Ravenloft fiction, right?
Oh yeah,
There's got to be Ravenloft fiction books that you can read. And I would say, for your campaign, I would look at those any of the Ravenloft novels for a way to bring your character, or get inspired for ideas of your character to bring them into the world of Curse of Strahd, right? Because a lot of the standard high fantasy stuff that you would read that's associated with Forgotten Realms just plain doesn't apply to Barovia. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't straight up read any of the old adventures. I think you might, certainly I wouldn't read anything like around Strahd or anything like that, because I think that would give you maybe some spoiler ideas. I think you could read stuff about Van Richthofen, right? Mm-hmm. You could read anything about Van Richthofen that would be interesting and inspirational to you, perhaps. Yeah, so I would say go after one of the books, read a story. Don't expect what's in the story to map 100% to what's in the adventure, but it will give you the feel and the flavor, right? Yeah. Of the mists and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would stay away from anything too, like Tom was saying, I would not read any adventure type stuff. The fiction is okay. But I think a lot of the fun with Curse of Strahd is not knowing anything going into it, because it is supposed to be, thrown into kind of a new world. I know when I played Curse of Strahd, we came into it from the Forgotten Realms. So there was, you're just sort of on a carriage ride, and you start going through this mist, this cloud, and you can't see in front of you, and then suddenly you're in Barovia, and no one's familiar with anything outside of that mist. And so it threw all of our characters off, because people were like, I don't recognize your kind here and stuff like that. So it might be interesting to know if you are from Barovia or if you're from outside of Barovia. But beyond that, I wouldn't dig too deep into Ravenloft. But yeah, there's some good fiction stuff out there that covers it. Even some older stuff, I think. I don't know if Salvatore ever did any Ravenloft books, but
yeah, Van Richten's guides are all over the place, right? There's a ton of them for AD&D. I would, if you wanted to get some background of the world without getting too gross into it. I don't know that I would read the vampire one, because it probably has too much Strahd spoiler type of stuff. But you could look at like the Guide to the Vistani or the Guide to the Mists or anything like that. That could be fun. Some of those old Van Richten's guides. Yeah. Hey, BSB Care, thanks for checking in. We'll see you Saturday at 12:30 Pacific.
Or earlier.
I hope that gives you some places to go with inspiring your character. But yeah, as Dom says, there's a big part of it that is just like discovering what's going on. It definitely has a very Frankenstein, vampire-y, also Dracula kind of feel to it. So you'll totally tune into that, and hopefully you'll find it engaging. So
yeah.
Enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
We'll take this last question here, and then we're going to wrap things up, because we've been going for an hour and 45 minutes.
All right.
Kirby says, slightly off topic, as a DM, what would you do if a player tried to put Strahd into a bag of holding or a portable hole? Penny Dreadful and Van Helsing. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of fiction that you can watch, but I think rather than watching shows for Tabletop Tales brings up Penny Dreadful and Van Helsing type of stuff. I think rather than watching other people's properties, I think it's best to start by dipping your toes into the fiction that was specifically created behind this module, right? Because I know Chris Perkins goes into the Wizards of the Coast library and mines all that stuff for references that he can include when he does a reboot or revision. And he was the one who was behind Curse of Strahd. So all of that stuff that it came out of AD&D around the Ravenloft world is touched at or hinted on or whatever in the current adventure. So I would say rather than going, well, why doesn't it work the same way it worked in Van Helsing? Well, that's because that fiction is a movie that exists standalone of itself, rather than the stuff that's old, even though it's a new edition, does carry a through line forward, right? With a better understanding of what's happening. What would I do if a player tried to put Strahd into a bag of holding or portable hole? You have to keep in mind that Strahd is a vampire, right? So grappling him is difficult. I also think, I can't remember if he specifically can turn into mists, but
I'm pretty sure.
Most vampires can take on gaseous form sort of at will. So I think it would be difficult. Also, he's undead, right? So who cares if they put him in a portable hole or a black hole, he doesn't have to breathe. So they're not going to choke him out that way. Are they containing him? If I'm not mistaken, a portable hole and a bag of holding can't take any damage. Like as soon as you start to do damage to the inside, it just basically blows out back into the prime material, right? So even if you were to grapple the character and stuff him in the bag and close the bag up, my understanding is they can just have to do a point of piercing damage, and the thing blows up. They're incredibly fragile, right? They're incredibly convenient, but they're not designed to be a particularly potent trap. I think they can be used creatively, but I think that using them against one of the #1 villains in all of Dungeons and Dragons is probably not going to be a particularly effective strategy. Are you in a pocket dimension when you're in a bag of holding? I mean, if Strahd has spells, he should be able to cast a spell and get out of it too, right?
Yeah. I think it would be next to impossible to get Strahd into a bag of holding.
I would argue he would be able to cast a Dispel Magic, which would also disgorge him back onto the prime material plane. That being said, I think it's worth your time as a DM when you're doing your preparation to consider ways that my villain can escape. Because I've often found that if I am inclined to have a villain try to escape, I need to have them start escaping a good 2 rounds before I actually end up having them start escaping. I usually have them start escaping and then they get caught and it's over and they never had a chance to get away. And I realize in hindsight, if I'd started that 2 rounds earlier, he might have actually gotten away.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can stick him in the bird book. Yeah. This came into question due to Strahd being tied to the extra-dimensional space of Barovia. I mean, I don't. But I don't know enough about the nature of that to really say does he contain Barovia inside of himself? I don't.
Technically, isn't it like a sub-plane of shadow or something like that? It's not necessarily an extra-dimensional space. It's a.
To be fair, I have not run Curse of Strahd. I've only played it, so I haven't looked extensively at his stats and what his connection is to the plane.
Yeah.
You can try to put a vampire in a bag of holding. I don't think it's going to work for very long.
Just stock up your character with bags of holding and then just try
one after that.
Yeah.
You put when that bag explodes, you put another one on top of it, and then that one.
Why not?
Yeah.
Eventually it will work.
Eventually it'll work.
And then Black Dragon suggests going to Athos after you defeat Strahd or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. Just drop all of your weapons, wear no metal, and
Everything's cool.
and no magic, and you'll be great.
I think I've brought this up before, but one of my buddies played a Dark Sun campaign, and the DM was like, "I'm going to allow you a boon at the start of the game here. You're allowed like 2 pounds of metal, like any object up to 2 pounds or whatever, or maybe it was 5 pounds, and this will be incredibly valuable to you. So you tell me what you want to get." And he was like, "I'm getting a crowbar." And they're like, "Oh, you don't want to get a sword? You don't want to get like a spearhead?" You know? And he's like, "No, everything in this world is like put into like a wood crate or a bone crate or a wicker basket or whatever." He's like, "If I have a crowbar, I'm king of the world."
Yeah.
Tabletop Tales says, "I've read online stories about people through clever schemes who try to drown powerful characters in bags of holding or shape change into a tapeworm and have them drink that, and then turn it into a rhino for an instant kill. When players use rules mechanics to defeat things versus epic combat." That's just me as a GM. I mean, I think the question is, what sort of fun are people having at the table? And if people get off on rules lawyering something where they're like, "Okay, well, if this is the way that it works, then technically I should be able to do this, and then it'll work, and it'll work perfectly." I think it's okay to let that work once, and then afterwards go, "Okay, well, that seems like a major league short circuit. There would be some sort of counter to that technique. Otherwise, kings would use it against their enemies, and have their spies deploy this all the time. What's the counter to this? Why isn't this used all the time?" And then throw that as a challenge to the players who like rules are lawyering this stuff so much.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess that is true. Well, then I guess they would, and they can kind of like talk through whatever that logical trap is or whatever. But, I mean, keep in mind, if characters want to do that sort of thing, you can very easily turn that back on them. "Oh yeah, no, you took a drink out of that fountain at the crossroads or whatever. It turns out there was a tapeworm in there. It turns into a rhino and it kills you." My response when people ask me leading questions about like what's a rules clearly a rules loophole is like, "Can I do this?" And I will oftentimes turn it back on them and say, you tell me what you think, because if you want your character to do this, keep in mind everybody else in the world knows that this is a potential exploit, right? So if your thing is that if you cast Dispel Magic on a bag of holding, whatever's inside gets shunted off into a demiplane or whatever, then that's the way that it works all the time for everybody else in the world, right? So it is a certain type of fun that you can have. That's fine if you want to do that sort of intellectual jousting and engage in those hypothetical debates about, well, here's how magic really works. That's fine. If that's your play style, have at it. It's not really my play style, and I tend to try to be reasonable in nerfing those things as I encounter them in a way that seems reasonable, right? That's redundant, but that's what happens 2 hours into the stream.
I just try and make them be more polite. If someone says, "Can I do something?" I say, "May I do something?"
May I do something? And then everybody wants to slap you.
Yeah, exactly. And then they forget about it.
Right. So the player said how fun it was, and that's the main focus. That's fine, right? Like that's they came up with this really cool plan, and it worked. Great. Is it something that's only going to work that one time and be really cool that one time? Hey, go for it. It's awesome, right? If it's something that creates an exploit that they can spam over and over and over again, then you need to address it, and a reasonable player will go, "Yeah, we should address this." Yeah. Just like when Gaurav got Black Razor, which was overpowered, and we let him play around with it as it being overpowered for a while, and that was fun and interesting, and then we both came to the joint agreement that we need to tone this thing down because it's overshadowing the rest of the table. And that story arc has reached a natural kind of end point. So let's fix it. And we did. And I think everybody's happy with what happened, So, yeah.
I really like the idea of a D&D Mythbusters, but anyway.
D&D Mythbusters with your friends Kermit the Frog and Fozzie Bear. Yeah, peasant railguns. I'm not sure exactly what that is referring to, but I'm going to put that note on my... Yeah. Peasant rail. Oh, maybe Tobias is in a railgun. Maybe they're going to shoot Tobias into space.
They already are in space.
Maybe they're going to shoot him against an A-10 Warthog and try and take it out of the sky.
Oh, wait, are we in Gamma World?
What if they go down the elevator to where the God's Fire is, and there's a roller coaster there that says Dungeons and Dragons over the entrance, and they get on.
And someone says, "Let's get on this Dungeons and Dragons ride."
The Dungeons and Dragons ride, come on!
Yeah. Woo! One of
Spelljammer. The rumor is Spelljammer's coming back. That's the rumor. It's not particularly well hidden. It's, or that I don't have any confirmation either way. So don't take my word for it. But the buzz on the internet is that you're going to see Spelljammer sometime in the next year. Okay, it wasn't my thing, but that's fine.
All right.
I was going to say, what would I rather see come back? Planescape could be fun. Spelljammer was not at the top of my list.
No?
Dark Sun could be interesting.
Dark Sun, I think, would be... Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
I'm trying to think of any of the other settings. Anyway, that's fine. I love that cartoon.
Yeah, I've got it on DVD.
So do I. I have the DVD that comes with a little special rules book, right? Yeah. Oh, and 3.5e handing off an item was a free action. A peasant could hand off an object. So the peasant really. So you just keep passing it off. Funny. All right.
Dragonlance, yeah.
Very good. DJ Regular, thanks for being our clips master. We're very much appreciated. Very good. Thanks to Farquaad and BSB Care and all of our mods who help keep the channel safe, friendly, clean, and accessible for all of you who are new to our channel. This Saturday, you can see the next episode of the Iron Keep Chronicles starting at 12:30 Pacific Saturday afternoon, going to 3:30. Then we will then have a little talk back session where the rest of the cast will be here. I'm going to try and talk as little as possible and let them talk and maybe ask questions about what they think is going on.
Yeah, you should.
Where they want to go with their where they want to go with their characters, or you and chat can. It's a subathon, so you don't have to donate money. We want you to tell your friends, tell your neighbors, sub it up, sub it up, sub it up. We will have prizes available for you, so please tune in for that. It starts at 9 o'clock in the morning with Tempting Fate. Burbank area GM Rick Budd will be hosting that event. And then we're at 12:30. Yes.
Yes.
4 o'clock is. Am I wrong? Is that
is
4?
Legacy.
Is Legacy.
Yep.
At 7:30. 7:30 is Wildcards.
Yep.
That ends the night, right?
Well, at the very end of the night
is when the giveaways are.
Well, we do giveaways. There will be a specific giveaway for each stream. All right. So each show has its own sort of giveaway thing. Tempting Fate, we are giving away a PDF copy of Aegon, which is
John Harper's game.
John Harper.
He's currently working on 2nd edition Aegon, as a matter of fact.
Awesome. And also we're going to collect all of the Lasers and Feelings, also by John Harper, all the hacks that they played through the last season of Tempting Fate. So you'll get PDFs of all that stuff, or at least links to those, and a PDF of Aegon. And then, so if you sub up or resub or gift a sub or receive a sub from a gift during that time, you'll be eligible for those rewards. We'll go over this again on Saturday too, between every show. But then during Iron Keep, Brian Patterson, it's his birthday today!
Happy birthday, D20
Monkey! So D20 Monkey will do a personalized, full-color character portrait of you. Full body, all that stuff, whatever the heck you want. He will do it, and he's awesome. That picture you can't see right now, but of the Grumfendire Crumpet, that's him. He's super awesome, very cool. So that's the giveaway during Iron Keep.
Yes, it is 4 p.m. West Coast time here right now. Iron Keep will be at 12:30 West Coast time, Pacific Daylight time.
Yeah.
12:30 on Saturday. So I'm not sure, Ventolem, where you are.
He will, Jordan. He will draw you like one of his French girls, but only you.
Yes.
Yes, and then Legacy is the preview of the brand new game from Stephen Pope. It's a City of Mist game, which is powered by the Apocalypse system. It is a supers game. It's kind of a supers noir game, and it's going to be really cool. I'll let Stephen describe it for you. We have 2 of the cast members that will be regulars on Legacy that are going to be there, and then 2 guests that will be there. Kelly Nugent and Alyssa Appleton from our Dark Sun game, if you remember that. Alyssa Appleton will both be playing there regularly. And then Michael Holmes and Buckle from Uncanny Valley will both be playing, joining Stephen for that preview session. Then for wildcards, and yeah, you get a City of Mist core PDF. That will be the giveaway during the Legacy game. And then wildcards, we're going to be giving away some. Jordan can answer this one. I believe the Savage Worlds core rulebook, and I believe the player's handbook for Deadlands Reloaded. So there's that. And then at the end of the night,
so we'll be on at 8:30 p.m. Oslo time. So that'll be 8:30 tomorrow night.
In Norway?
Or Saturday night for Norway, Oslo, yes. So
okay.
They're 8 hours ahead of us is what it says.
Really?
That's what it says.
Oslo's only 8 hours ahead of us?
That's what it says. Could be wrong. That's what it says.
Well, I know London is 8 hours ahead of us.
Yeah, it might be 9, so I don't know.
Right, so around, I don't know, around there.
Yeah.
And then it's midnight there now.
Yeah,
so
then you are 8 hours ahead of us.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll start at 12:30 on Saturday. That will be 8:30 your local time.
Yep.
In the evening.
Because we're on daylight savings time and they're not.
I see. Okay.
Gotcha.
No,
Thank you,
crafty Europeans.
Then from 11 to midnight, maybe a little bit longer. We'll see if we can make it that long.
On Saturday night?
On Saturday night. Anyone who is a sub, so anyone who's a sub, whether you subbed up that day or not, can join us in a sub-only chat room, and they can direct us playing an RPG, basically. You guys get to be the GM.
I'm not sure that's how a sub works, but okay.
Listen, if I can be Dom, they can be subs.
Yeah, you guys all have to be subs
what to do.
He's Dom. The subs are telling you what to do. We call that topping from the bottom.
Guys, I just set it up. For him. I die a little inside.
I was up a little bit late last night, and I got up early this morning. So
yes, it will be pure chaos. It will be a lot of fun, and I hope you guys can tune in for that. So that will be great. And yeah, like I said, all subs, no matter when you've subbed, are welcome. If you've already subbed and it doesn't look like you're going to resub on Saturday, consider gifting a sub to someone else. That will put you into the drawing. It will also put them into the drawing. So you're actually helping 2 people out at once. And
the final thing I will say related to that is if you have Amazon Prime, you have a free sub just waiting for you, right? You can get a free Twitch Prime sub, and you could use that on us right now.
It's true. It's true. Or on Saturday.
That's the buzz. All right. Later tonight is nothing. You have the rest of the night to do whatever you want. Enjoy. Go forth and hold court with your various role-playing fellows, friends and fellows. Tomorrow night is another installment of Wildcards. You can do !calendar to check that out. So you can get caught up on Wildcards tonight and then jump in on the action tomorrow night. Of course, a great game. And then on Saturday is the big subathon, right? Yes. So we've been through all that. Hey, great discussion today. I really think it was fun to have a kind of a leisurely extended chat. I'm glad we got this opportunity to talk through what's going on in the game and then also what's going on, in your game and whatnot. So I've got some friends from out of town waiting for me at the airport, so I'm going to wrap things up here. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Thanks to everyone who donated last night to really unlock some cool things. Thanks to everyone who gave a shout out today for the bits and whatnot, and who just joined the channel and had a little chat with us. I love the interaction. Thanks to everyone who spread the word on social media. It's that easy. It doesn't cost you anything, and you telling your friends how cool the show is really does help us grow our subscriber base. We're an independent channel. We don't get sponsorship or funding from anybody else, so this is the only way. Growing our numbers helps us grow and keep the channel growing. So thank you so much. Again, thanks to our mods for keeping everything safe, friendly, clean, and accessible. I'm Tom Lommel. This is Dom Zook. Until next time, let's dungeon! Ha!
Come on.
No, click faster. Click again. No, click more. More clicking. Guess what I'm doing?